Welcome to another episode of Humanly Plausible with your hosts, Roly and Richard from the Pink Collective.
What's going on, Richard? So we are now in the midst of, let's see what we got going on. So we got a full rebrand.
Yes.
For an organization, 35 years, celebrating 35 years this year. And then we have two companies that are launching their first advertising campaign
Ever.
for the first time ever.
Yeah. It's been very, it's been a character building time and brand building time. And I think it's been really exciting to see how we've been able to, work with the client, find out their value propositions, discover who they are, and translate it the best way possible for more than just an advertising campaign, but a way to really connect with their stakeholders.
So the reason why I brought this up, because I just wanted, before we get into the whole box conversation, I wanted to talk about the emotional psyche that we're going through now, what these clients are going through. So, as far as a rebrand, what is that like for them? And then as far as launching, one of them was also a rebrand, launching their first advertising campaign for the first time as well. But we've been going through a lot of different, I guess in my career, I've handled one at a time. I've never battled with three at the same time.
And I think, it's funny that you said the emotions, because I think that might be something that people don't necessarily know or feel, that, it's kind of, as a marketing agency, advertising agency, we're doing the work, but we're emotionally invested.
Correct.
Very emotionally invested in the way these campaigns roll out, the stories that we're telling, how do they perform, how does the client feel, how do we walk the client and prepare the client and everyone on their team to kind of be the brand ambassadors that we're creating through these campaigns.
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, like this week I've been called defensive.
Well,
just throwing it out there. Well, you know who you are.
Well, I tell you the thing about Roly. I think Roly is, and we have this discussion because I find myself at times, it's not just Roly, it's we.
Be careful what you say.
No, it's we, because what happens is we really truly become an extension of the client. That we're in it, and so once we put the work towards what we're trying to build, it's almost like a baby that you're nurturing, and you want to make sure that it's raised right and that it reaches its full potential. Mm-hmm. And it can come off as defensive when we're trying to defend what we know has worked in the past, what we know is the formula for success. We're not listening,
right?
But at the same time, we really want to be strong and champion the ideas that we've created and turned into an actual campaign.
And that's the biggest point. So, and the other part too is that agnostically, we're seeing it from the outside. Mm-hmm. So these clients are in the daily grind every day, and so what they don't realize is that we're seeing it from the outside. And so there's a different picture that we're seeing. Not only that, but strategically, we have a plan. There's a roadmap that has already been pitched. It's not a surprise. Mm-hmm. But again, clients tend to default to their own ways or their experience. And then I guess that's why I do get defensive. But I'm not really defensive. I'm protecting the game plan.
Right.
So it's like if we're a football team and we go out there and all of a sudden we start getting our head smashed in. Now we just start going crazy. Well, that's not. No, we got to stick to the game plan no matter what, and just and see the game plan through. So, I guess I'm defending my defensive statement. That is messed up. That's messed up.
Well, I think I do believe that defensiveness is really the best way is a testament to the investment we make.
There you go.
Because you can't be defensive about something you're not connected to.
Yep.
And I mean, it's something that all works in progress. And, sometimes it's just about, maybe changing the way you defend or say what you do. But at the end of the day, we're still always going to be invested. And it would be disingenuous of us to pretend that, hey, we're just going to let things fly and, we're really here to make our clients successful and be a part of that positive outcome. And if that means really championing what we put on paper, we're going to have to do that. And you usually find a good compromise. Let's be very clear about that. It's usually something that we can always work through. But at the end of the day, we're trying to really, really, really be successful on behalf of the client.
So to summarize, you're saying that we won't yes to get a check.
We can't do that.
And we'll always fight to strategize.
Correct.
All right.
And yeah.
Come on, that was a Richard summary.
But right to strategize. Yes.
Yes to checks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's get into the box, because who knows what that's going to have, what's going to come out of that. But I'll let you do the honors.
Okay. Yeah. This is going to be very interesting. And the box is crazy because it's usually very consistent with whatever we're going through at the time.
We should call it the crazy box.
Yes.
Because we haven't named the box.
That's it. That might be a good thing. So
all right, here we go.
I pulled it. You can read it out.
Is that your handwriting?
Yeah, that's the old one.
All right. Beyond seminars and workshops, how do organizations provide consistent and effective efforts to promote diversity? Oh my God.
Yeah. Wow.
This is a smoking gun right here. Oh man.
It's interesting because so the issue of diversity, interestingly, we are based here in Florida. And so this topic right now is a very hot topic in Florida because some legislation in terms of sort of diminishing funds that go to diversity training. So this is actually a very timely message. So I think the foundation for it is really having a value system.
Right. I mean, and that's what I was thinking right now as I'm reading the question. In part, like when we do our discoveries, like just going through the values and mission of an organization, I think this is something that we also have to be mindful now of as organizations. And it has to be instilled in values, because a lot of times it is, but it's just not acted upon. Yeah. And it really, I mean, at least for myself, I mean, it's not something I've thought about, like just making sure there's an equal opportunity for folks, which is extremely important. But I guess I've always, from my perspective, I'm always looking for talent. I don't care what you look like,
right?
Or what, whether it's female, male, like if you're a person that I know can do the job, that's what I'm looking at. Right. But I know that this is obviously, I'm talking from the world of advertising, but I know in different industries, there's a lot of different things that come into play. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, wow, this is a good one for us.
It is. Well, you know what? It's really been interesting in my career, coming from education administration, where I was for many times, I was the only black face in the room. And it was, interesting because especially with the sector that I spent a lot of my career in terms of for-profit proprietary schools, where many of the students look just like me, not to have a lot of representation in the higher echelons of companies that were, specifically in those communities, was concerning for me, and which really prompted me to get more involved in the organizations that advocated for these schools, because I thought that there needed to be a voice. But, going back to the question in terms of what goes beyond workshops and seminars, because I think some companies think if they have like a quarterly diversity seminar or bring in a speaker once a year to talk about it, that they're doing something. They have to understand the difference between a blueprint and a Band-Aid. Those seminars and workshops are Band-Aids. They're reactionary usually. You see it all the time. You see a video happen.
Get it in the books.
Where there was a racial incident at your organization or your store or at your place of business. Somehow that video gets out on TikTok or Instagram, and then all of a sudden, ABC company has zero tolerance for racial discrimination. And in response to the situation that happened, we will be having a day of diversity training to ensure that all of our employees are conscious and consistent in their tolerance of diversity and inclusion. That's a Band-Aid. What in your organization allowed the incident to happen in the first place? What is your blueprint for creating a just and inclusive environment that is sustainable and consistent? That is your part of your values. And that's why in our discovery, values are one of the biggest things that we look for in creating a brand.
All right, so let's do that. Let's create let's play imaginary build the company with diverse values. Like, how in the hell? Like, okay, so like, you know, Hispanic Cuban parents, born and raised in Florida. And you, what's your
Jamaican, but African American? Because I grew up here, so my experience is probably more African American than it is totally Caribbean. Even though my culture is so embedded within it.
Then we have Elsie, our makeshift producer today.
Yeah.
A new team member of the Pink Collective. What was your background again? Puerto Rican, born and raised. Where? Here? Okay. Born and raised in South Florida.
Right.
All right, so we have this company. And so like let's think about like a generic company, not advertising. Like, how do we start to as let's say we're the founding members, like how do we promote? How do we work? How can we create something like that? Because sometimes, for me, it's sometimes easier said than done. Like, how do we start to proactively do that in a way? And maybe, like, for instance, like maybe it's like, you know, our perspectives are different. Like, let's say we're business partners in this sense. You see things a certain way, and I see things a certain way. How can we start to establish some ground rules on being able to diversify an organization?
You know, I just think it's going back to something that you said. I think it's really setting up a standard that we are looking for talent that performs a certain way. We are.
So here's another way. So here's funny. I mean, not that it's funny, but so like, let's say our organization has to have, like, for instance, like we've been recruiting folks, and it happens to be that our entire organization is black. Like,
I would, you know,
but it's
that would be,
but it's because of the talent. Let's say like the talent.
Right. Well, listen, I know. And
a couple of years ago, our agency was primarily female.
Right.
And I look like a male freaking pig.
And you know, you're going to, I think at times you're going to organically have, I guess, some foundational things that tend to look like, for example, if you start a black-owned business, you know, at first, obviously, everyone that's going to be involved is going to be black. Right. You know, and because that's the perspective that you're coming from. I think what the problem is when you don't afford people of other ethnicities the same opportunity. I think that's the key.
So that's okay. So it's about defining what that means. A diversified.
Yeah. And I think, for example, it's been interesting to me, you know, I've heard some people challenge the viability of historically black colleges and universities and make the presumption that, well, if they can have black colleges, how come we can't have all white colleges?
Right.
And, you know, you can't go to a black college if you're white, so they're discriminating. No, we're not. Because if you go to historically black colleges, there's a growing white enrollment at historically black colleges. If you look at most historically black colleges in terms of their graduate schools, there's extremely big growth in that. So it's, you know, I think when you talk about diversity, it's really just about creating equal opportunity and equity and access and value. And, you know, allowing people to come in, because I think we're being naive to think that there are not still some organizations out there that prefer to be a certain way ethnically or in terms of gender or even sexual orientation. So in a lot of different ways, it's breaking down those barriers and really assessing people for their talent and the value that they bring to your organization. But it has to be something that's built in from the very beginning.
Yeah, and in the question, it does say to provide consistent and effective efforts to promote. So it's how do we, you know, these efforts to promote diversity. And so I think like how a company can put, I mean, are we talking about ways we can do it when we're asking for a job position? I mean, offering a job position?
I think you can make a conscious effort to go and seek out diversity as well. So that's another great point.
Okay.
For example, there are corporations now that make it a point to, if they're sending recruiters, if they're looking for engineers, for example, they make sure, of course, you can go to the Purdue's and the big schools that are what we call PWIs, predominantly white institutions, but a lot of organizations are making sure they also send recruiters to HBCUs, and especially HBCUs that excel in STEM. So, I think that you need to go out and try to find, and when you think about it, wouldn't you, as an organization, want to make an intentional effort to find the best talent out there for whatever you do?
I agree. Well, for me, I've always seen it. My perspective again is like the more diversified you are, the more perspective you have.
100%.
So it's not, again, for me, sometimes there's going to be moments that I'm going to, or situations where I won't mind the talent as much as I will the person.
I got it. Yeah.
Where like I might, okay, maybe this person doesn't have the exact talent that I want, but the person, this person brings a lot to the table as a whole.
Yeah.
So those are things that I, at least from my perspective, that I really look into. So like, and then again, the more diversity I have. So like when we were when we were primarily female, to me, that wasn't great because I had too many females. Like, so well, I'm not going to get into that.
No.
But having the mix,
it's actually
because I'm going to get. Yeah, I don't want to start a whole.
Exactly. No,
I'm going to get ousted.
That was a very wise pause. You know what I mean? So,
but you know what I mean?
Diversity. I mean, just when you break down what it actually means, is a variety of perspectives. And I think the word perspective is important because sometimes it goes beyond the skills or it goes beyond the talent, as you pointed out. And you just want people to bring a different life experience. I always, one of the things during political seasons when, I've had debates with people, it's interesting because I'm always saying, well, you got to understand that I'm always going to vote based on my perspective as a person of color living in this country. That's that's the lens from which I look at things. You bring that to the workplace. If you're looking at the way you analyze a client or the way you're moving forward with a client, there's a perspective that someone who is a woman, someone who is Asian, someone who has a different sexual orientation may bring to the table that you wouldn't think about because you don't live in that world, and you're benefiting. You're richer as an organization because now you have all these different life experiences being articulated in the way that you analyze and evaluate opportunities.
Okay, so like let's talk about the organizations really quick that maybe they're stuck in their old school ways. Maybe you're like an old school Cuban that, primarily thinks that women can't just, they have a...
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to go deep. So, they exist. They are out there because we bump into them every once in a blue, every once in a while. Go get therapy? Like you need counseling? Check yourself before you wreck yourself?
I'm gonna be just totally honest.
Go ahead. This is human. The show is called Humanly Plausible, not like politically correct.
It's there's people who won't change. There are just people who won't change,
and there it is.
It just is.
Leave the organization.
They're not going to change. They're not going to, and you got it. But here's the thing: you got to call it when you see it.
Okay.
If you are a conscious person that believes that the world, organizations, companies, communities are better when there's a respect for diversity and inclusion. When you see people who are anti that, people who are consciously and intentionally blocking the opportunity, then you have to speak up about it. At the end of the day, I just want, and it's one of the things that is really, to me, something that I've really wrestled with for a long time in terms of society. Mm-hmm. If we were to optimize the opportunities for people of every race, every sexual orientation, every gender, and we really were focused on optimizing every one of those resources, we would be light years ahead of where we are now. Mm-hmm. Lack of diversity or squelching diversity hurts us. It does, because we're limiting perspectives, we're limiting talent, and we're limiting resources.
Agreed. And I think it all comes down to just communication overall. I mean, because, okay, like, the example of old school person running an organization, like old school mentality. But if people actually start to speak up and I'm not talking about like creating like, situations and lawsuits and whatnot, but having conversations where like, whether it's through some sort of forum, that, maybe it's a survey that you do with the employees or something where you start a dialogue to get a feel for things. Because again, I can tell you as a business owner, I've been told things where it caught me completely off guard. I'm like that, where people have critiqued the way I am. And I'm like, wow, I never saw that.
You weren't conscious of it. Yeah.
You got to be conscious of it at the same time, but you got to be open to it. And I think that it comes down to as a leader in an organization, you have to be open to people,
right?
And those lines of communication are so important, which is usually what we're fighting about.
Exactly, and that you have to be open to the difficult conversations and to widening your perspective and listening to. I find it amazing at times when I hear someone who is not from my culture, not from my world, tell me what racism feels like, or tells me there's no such thing as a microaggression. How do you know? You don't have to deal with them. You know what I mean? So I think if you're a leader, especially when someone comes to you who is sharing something from their experience that you're not familiar with, you should be humble enough to tell me what that feels like. A microaggression. What is it? Well, so-and-so always coming in and wants to touch my hair. Some sisters do not like people to come up and touch when they get their braids done. They don't want nobody coming up and touching their hair. Ooh, but, sometimes in the workplace, oh, you got your hair? Let me touch. And it's one of the sisters do not like that. And if they come to you and say, this person, she's always touching my hair and it's annoying, and I'm cool with her, but I don't like it. I feel it. You got to be able to have that conversation. Say, well, there's something we got to deal with, and not just dismiss it because you think it's petty or it's not a big deal. What's the big deal? She's touching your hair. It's important to that young lady.
100%.
And she feels it as a microaggression. So once again, it's about being open to having those discussions.
All right. So I think that's a good summarization. Is that a word? Summarization? Summary. That's a good summary of the conversation. I think ultimately what we've landed on is that you got to be open, you got to be aware, and you got to want to make an effort. So it all starts with making that effort, because again, like we're all in it together. So again, when you work in this this group environment, it's important that we respect each other and allow each other to communicate openly.
And on behalf of a significant part of the Florida population, to those in Tallahassee that believe that diversity and inclusion are a bad thing, you're absolutely wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Speaking on behalf of me, Richard McCulloch, you're absolutely wrong. Diversity and inclusion is very important for the forward progress of America and for us to actually live up to the creed of who we're supposed to be.
Let's go. Guys, have a great day. Humanly plausible. See you next time.
You feel the same if you were at the back of her mind.